Hi, this is Jim Hodges, Chief Analyst at Heavy Reading, and today I'm here with G. Alkebsi, who is the Solution Architect at NetNumber. And we're going to be talking today about 5G security, in fact, 5G control plane security. So G, Heavy Reading and NetNumber recently collaborated on a research project, 5G security, and in there we looked at some of the implications for the control plane. And there were a number of interesting takeaways from the research, key finding-wise. And one of the things that we noticed initially was when we looked at the sort of overall confidence levels of control plane for securing 5G services, there was a number of things that were quite interesting. The first thing was that when we looked at 5G really complex services like 5G, IoT services, and MEC from a control plane perspective, there was really only somewhat limited or somewhat confident levels of confidence. So in other words, when we looked at the numbers, only about 4 out of 10 were either somewhat confident or not confident at all. They could actually even manage some of the control plane implications for 5G security for, again, these services like IoT and MEC. Was that a surprise to you?
No, actually not, because with the control plane, actually for 5G, it serves service domains. It's like you're not talking about just normal commercial consumers, like pick up a cell phone and make a phone call, stream something on your phone. But there is like the IoT domain. There are like autonomous cars, remote surgery. A lot of critical applications. So the core has to be really secure, and they have to be confident with that. Another perspective of it is, this is still new, and we're at the release 15 of the specs. Release 16 is going to add more, enhancement to the service-based architecture to make, the network more secure. And, it's got to be secure because the end users, the applications are more critical than ever before.
Exactly. And the other part of that, like you mentioned, the control plane, sort of 3G, 4G different services. And the other thing we asked in the survey that was interesting was when we asked them to disagree on a number of statements about 3G, 4G control plane, it was pretty much unanimous, like 60 to 70% range for almost a lot of these answers was that things like 5G roaming, security, 5G slicing, security, all these things were going to be more complex. And there was one that was even like over, I think in this almost 70% range, 70% of the respondents agreed that basically to have 5G network, new services architecture, there was like a 70% of the survey respondents felt that signaling storms would be much greater potential. There would be much greater potential than 3G or 4G. So that to me wasn't too much of a surprise. I'm just wondering if you kind of hear about that when you talk to your customers as well.
Right. It's a common concern with all the service providers. There's going to be a greater number of subscribers, even though they could be just IoT devices or anything. So there's going to be a lot of signaling going on in the network,
right.
And then with the new architecture, there's a lot of new functions. It's not simply a few or a number of core functions. Now with the service-based architecture, network functions can register themselves, and through the network repository function, network exposure function with the third-party applications for the IoT and so on. So it's going to be more difficult. And then with roaming, we're using HTTP too, which is an internet-based protocol. So it's something that is maybe easier to hack, but there's all the security work that is being done to secure it, TLS, end-to-end application security, and so on. So it will get there, but people need to get some operational expertise, and then
right.
based on that, act on securing the network in a better way.
Right. You mentioned a couple of things like network repository function, network exposure function. Those are kind of the key parts of the new 5G service-based architecture, the NGC, the new next-gen core. And again, when we looked in the survey results, when we asked the survey respondents sort of what functions were they going to kind of initially focus on before commercial launch, sort of the NRF and the NEF kind of were the sort of prominent ones. And that kind of makes sense when you think about that they now have kind of this service-aware control plane that they never had before. So they need these functions to be able to expose it and secure them. So again, I'm assuming that's something that you're hearing from your customers, that when they want to look at 5G launch, they want to be able to look at sort of the NRF function, NEF function to secure that. Is that consistent with your discussions with customers?
Yes, I would agree with that. And like I mentioned, the network functions are not point-to-point like the legacy networks or 5G or any legacy network before 5G. In the 5G, the network functions will register themselves, and it's not a point-to-point connections anymore. They go on the service bus, and then they can reach any other network functions, and it's dynamically, goes with, scaling and new services. So when a network function is added, it gets registered,
Exactly.
and then the other network functions are aware of it, and then they can start using it. So it's definitely very important. Obviously, at the beginning, they don't have to start, if it's maybe there are some details that are not nailed down yet, they can start with similar to point-to-point connection, but typically they will have to end up with like the service-based architecture where everything has to go through the service discovery.
Yeah, interesting. It just kind of shows, I think, the focus of the control plane, and the results in our survey show that the service respondents and the service providers understand that, and they are starting to take action, which is kind of good news from my perspective.
Right, and yeah, we're looking forward to release 16 of the 3GPP specifications, which will add more. There's the enhanced service bus architecture, and there's some work that is being done driven by the GSMA. Right. NetNumber is also leading some of that effort, and we're looking forward to it.
Right. So more to come in the control plane.
Yep.
G, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.